information station, or you can listen live on demand at luinfo.com. Of course, in the first hour, we were treated to some smooth jazz, R&B music, courtesy of Eugene Peebles and the Talking Sax. And of course, we were joined by Bobby Cole and the Hazelwood East Spartans. But of course, it's always hour number 2, and that means it's the easy second hour. And of course, we're joined as always by the man, the Hall of Famer, Ron Zetcher in the house. Ron, how are you this morning?
Well, how can you not be good on a day like this, Earl?
Incredible.
It's gorgeous out.
Last 2 nights, I was out watching high school football at Hazelwood East Thursday and CBC last night. Unbelievable nights. I can sit and watch football. Great weather all night. Nights, a little cool, no heat. I mean, it was perfect weather. It was fantastic. Actually, I saw Parkway Central the other night. Thursday, that's who Hazelwood East played. So great nights.
I heard that Parkway Central played a pretty good football game for about 2 or 3 quarters.
Yeah, they had some opportunities. They moved the ball. See, they're young. Like you've talked about, they're young. They have talent. Quarterback is a sophomore. One kid running back, big back. They got a couple kids. They got some size and everything. You know, he's had a lot of speed, but Parkway Central's just young. But they got some talent. I think they'll develop into some pretty good unit. I think.
Well, you also are probably the guru of high school football and high school sports. How did our friend Mr. Sunkett do last night?
Actually, they were supposed to play tonight in the East St. Louis Classic, and that game got canceled. They were supposed to play at Team Gadsden, Florida. Not Gadsden, Florida. I forget that's Georgia. But yeah, they're a team from Havana, Florida, and I'm not sure what happened. So they're off tonight. And the Classic got canceled. It got scaled back to 2 games. So they're going back out of town next week. They'll be playing Bishop Gorman out of Las Vegas. Of course, game will be heard right here on 590 Blue Information Station with Marie Scott on the call.
And with the Florida team, they didn't have enough players to come over or take the ride or something, because I heard that from the high school they got in trouble or something. So
that happens.
Yes, it does.
That happens. Anyway, have we called Mr. Hancock?
Yes, time for our guest, of course. Ron, do the honors, of course.
Well, our guest today, we're in some big company today, Earl, with Mr. Bill Hancock. What Bill Hancock has done in the area of intercollegiate athletics is probably unsurpassed by any one man in America as an administrator. And just briefly, Bill, I just want to go over he was the first director of the Final Four, and then he became the Bowl Championship director. And then when the Bowl Championship went to the college football playoff, he became the administrator of that. So what else can I say, Earl?
He's done it all. And we look at college sports as it is today, and he's had a hand right in what we're looking at today, how big it's become, especially these playoffs, Final Four, playoff series, football.
Mr. Hancock, are you with us? Bill?
I think we lost him for a second. I think we'll get him back here.
Technical difficulties. I'm going to call him back.
Okay, we'll call him back.
Because I got him on, though. He was on air, but I think he may have hung up.
That's right. We'll get him on. But like you talk about, it's quite a impressive resume.
Yes, and while we're waiting for Bill, I do have a shout out, a big shout out to Christy Eilerman, who's a kindergarten teacher at Spady Elementary School. I subbed with her yesterday, kindergartners, and I left my wallet or dropped my wallet out of my pocket. Got home and I was ready to go out, and I put my hand in my back pocket and there was no wallet. So Christy waited at school for me. I drove back and she returned my wallet. And Christy and all the teachers at Spady School, we've got a good future. We got great kids in this country.
Absolutely. You know, I check every 5 minutes. I'm checking my pocket for my wallet, my keys in my left pocket, my wallet. And I'm on the plane. And I check open up for ID. I mean, it goes without saying. Got them. Okay.
Good morning, Bill.
Hi, Ron.
Boy, is it great to talk to you today. And I want you to say hello to my good friend here, Earl Austin.
Earl, greetings.
Good morning to you, Bill. I know Ron talked about your great resume and how much you've impacted collegiate sports today. What we're watching today. Also, I was looking at your background. I see you started your career at Oklahoma. I believe when you went to school, when you were an assistant sports information director in the early 70s. And that just kind of took me back. Just this couple of weeks ago, I watched on the 30 for 30 on the SEC network, The Wishbone. It was a documentary. It was tremendous. And of course, a big part of it was Alabama. And of course, it was Texas, but it was Oklahoma when Barry Switzer took over. And it just kind of took me back to my childhood, to those great Oklahoma teams that I still remember. I was 6 years old during that big Nebraska game in 71 in Norman. And then just how the Oklahoma program just blew up into just this national power with all these great athletes. And I just go, oh God, you were right in it. What was that like to see that Oklahoma program under Barry just become just a national power and running that wishbone? That documentary really took me back to my childhood days in a good way.
Well, I watched that piece also, and I thought it was really well done. The cool thing for me was that 71 Nebraska game was my senior year in college.
Wow.
I was already working full-time for the athletic department, but the players, the seniors, were my classmates. Jack Mildren and company, they came into OU at the same time I did as freshmen. So that made it even more fun for me to be around and get to watch them have that kind of success. Just my classmates, guys I went to school with.
How charismatic was Barry back then? I mean, obviously he, even as a child, you see how, as somebody that knew him and had worked with him and, like you said, watched him, as a younger coach, what was he like back then?
Well, he was great. Of course, in 1971, he was offensive coordinator.
Right.
Our head coach was Chuck Fairbanks, who had zero charisma. and I got to love Chuck, and he's passed away now, but he was not a charismatic person. But Barry was. From day one, you could see that he had what it took. And when Chuck left, Chuck went to the New England Patriots from Oklahoma. And when he left, there was no doubt that Barry deserved to be the head coach. And of course, Barry took it all to the stratosphere. Here's the thing about Barry. Barry was wonderful with people. He remembered people, and not as a phony thing, but he genuinely cared about people. And I've known another coach who was that way, and I think Ron will agree. Bill Self. Bill Self remembered people. He remembered where they were from. He remembered still does, their kids' names. And I understand that another person who had that gift was Bill Clinton. So there aren't many that have that kind of a gift with people, and Barry was one. And Barry, what is he, 87, 88 now, and he still has it. You can watch him walk on campus, and he will stop people and talk to them and say, "Hey, Bobby, hey, Ronnie, how you doing?" It's a remarkable gift.
Let me ask you this, Bill. A lot of the stuff that I read about you goes back to Hobart High School. Tell me a little bit about your days at Hobart High School, and you're in their Hall of Fame. I know that. That's where it all starts usually, isn't it, Bill? I mean, we all start somewhere.
Well, we do, and I'm lucky enough to be from a small community. And by the way, we pronounce it Hobart.
I apologize, sir.
No worries, no
Okay.
worries. But it was a small enough school that we had to do everything. I ran track and played tennis and played in the band. I was in the theater productions, and so we had to do everything. And there were 68 in our graduating class. I loved it. Growing up in the 50s and 60s in a small town, it was Mayberry. you rode your bicycle all over town. You were safe. People left their car keys in their car when they went to the grocery store. It was just a wonderful place to grow up. I was even more lucky because my dad owned the newspaper. And so I had a job from when I was age 11 up through when I graduated from high school, working for the newspaper. And I loved it. And I owe a lot of my career to learning how to write for that little community newspaper.
Well, in 1974, you became the editor. Is that correct?
I did. My father passed away. My brother and I inherited the newspaper. I was 23. I thought I was old and wise, but my brother ran the advertising and business side, and I ran the news side, and it was terrific. Needless to say, we covered the heck out of sports in our area, but I loved it. Great experience. They asked me to be in the community theater, and I wound up directing Oklahoma, My Fair Lady, and Sound of Music in the little community theater. So just all the experiences that we had in a small town that you really don't get in a big city. It helped me to grow and mature and learn.
Well, not only did you grow and mature and learn, you've had the greatest success of any administrator in the history of collegiate sports, in my opinion. And we met, and I was kind of joking around with my wife this morning, and I said, I met Mr. Hancock. I can call you Bill, can't I?
You betcha.
Okay. I met Bill when I was as they call us, a lonely referee in the Big 8 conference. And Bill Hancock, you were working in the Big 8, and you were an administrator, and I don't think you were at the highest strat at the time. So I kind of said to my wife, I said, now look what happened. I remained a lonely referee my whole life, and look where Bill's gone. I kind of got lost somewhere along the road.
Oh, well, think of all the experiences you had, Ron, and all the people that you interacted with over those years. It's awesome. How long did you referee in college at our level?
Well, I survived the college basketball 30 years. The last five, I could. Here's what happened. The last 5 years of my career, all of a sudden, I used to work the Kansas-Missouri game or the Memphis Louisville game in that conference. And then all of a sudden, the last 5 years, I'm working in basketball, Colorado and whoever. And, and they're telling you something. Your career is not where it was years ago, but it was a great experience. And the guy that I remember, I will never forget him, and you know him well, was little Johnny Overby.
Yeah, Johnny was a really good official when I started in the business. And then, of course, he became our supervisor, and people loved Johnny. He wasn't the greatest with paperwork and all that, but boy, he knew
to say the least.
And he knew officiating, and he knew people, and he was fantastic. Loved Johnny. And of course, he had a Dairy Queen out there in, where was it? Newton,
Kansas. Yeah, he bought that Dairy Queen.
And I think a bunch of us said, Johnny, don't buy that Dairy Queen. Don't do it.
Everybody that he knew who knew business told him not to buy that Dairy Queen, but he bought it, and boy, did he suffer. Oh, Bill. Hey, Bill, one night when Hank Nichols first took over as the director of the NCAA men's basketball officiating program, he had to work a game in every conference. So Hank worked a game with myself and Hightower at Wichita State, and Johnny Overby came there, to watch us and so forth. And you can't make this up. After the game, Overby, he's just ripping me about this call that I missed and that. You know how Johnny was. And then he says to Hightower, you missed this call and that call, and we're going on. And then he says to Nichols, he says, Hank, you want me to give you a critique? So Nichols kind of laughed. Johnny said, Henry, I'm being serious. Do you want a critique? That's how he called it, see? So Nichols says, yeah, give it to me. He says, Henry, I've got at least 6 travels that you missed in this game. You can't make it up. And Nichols laugh. What a great guy, Hank Nichols. What a good man he was.
Oh yeah, and he's still living. He's one of my favorite people. You know, Ron, you remember this, I think. But Hank and Johnny both smoked cigarettes.
Yes.
Not when they were officiating, but right after the game. And I was really close to those two guys. Hank, you know, was a Villanova guy. He was a professor at Villanova. You know that.
Oh yes.
And he's so proud that the Pope is a Villanova guy.
Isn't that awesome?
Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? Let me ask you a question, Ron, before we go too far. But you also called baseball, right?
I was a baseball umpire, and I refereed NCAA football also. So with 5 daughters, the first sport to go was baseball, and then football, because you had to be home a little bit, you know, to try to raise 5 of them, Bill. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Well, I always enjoyed baseball. I enjoyed officials from all sports. But I had a real fondness for baseball umpires. I don't know why. Maybe, I love baseball. But I'll go on to something which is Joe Fan has no idea how well-trained, knowledgeable officials are in all sports and how professional they are. And I don't say that just because it's you and me talking. I say that everywhere. People have no idea how good officials are. And I think you'd probably agree. I think they're probably even better today. All the games, football particularly, but basketball too, are harder to work now than they were back then.
No question.
Man, those guys are good.
Ron talked about your beginnings at the small town, at the newspaper and everything. How did those experiences help you in what you were able to accomplish later in your career? You've done so much. How did those beginnings kind of help you?
A couple of ways. First of all, I learned that every person has a story. And when you have a conversation with someone, it's not about me, it's about them. And it's about me wanting to learn about their story. And every person has a story. So I learned that. I learned how to make mistakes. In the newspaper business, you make a mistake every day. Every day you make a mistake. And I learned to say, yep, I messed up on that. I'm really sorry. And if you read tomorrow's paper, you'll see that I mess up again. Don't blame it on your assistant. Don't blame it on somebody else. Just stand up and say, yeah, that's my fault. Totally messed up. So that was a big thing from the newspaper business. And the last one is just learning how to write. I'm a pretty good writer.
Amen. Yes.
And just learn how to write. And you learn that from reading, of course, which I read a lot now still. But you also learn a lot from just flat writing. Just do it.
Well, Earl, why don't you tell them the writing you do, sir?
Oh, I've been the sports editor for the St. Louis American, local black newspaper for the last 30 years. So writing, I always tell young people, and there's so much with social media and everything. If you know how to write, I think you can still write your ticket to whatever part of communications you go into. I think if you learn how to write, it's still of the utmost importance to me. So to hear you say that, it definitely is good. I want to ask you too about, you were part of the Big 8 conference. One thing I always loved about the Big 8 conference, so many different things, but the conference tournament in Kansas City, postseason tournament, I think there's postseason tournaments everywhere, is like no other because it was always just in one location. What was special about that? Everybody going to Kemper for those 3-4 days in March. I think it was like magic. It was just different than any other conference tournament, I thought.
Well, it was the family getting together.
Exactly. Yes.
And that was the beauty of it. And of course, going back a long way, we had a holiday tournament.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
Time.
That's right.
Every year. And it was the same deal. It was the family getting together. and that kind of thing, I'm afraid, is missing to some extent now. But boy, we had it good back in the day.
Well, we talked, Bill, about that, and I think once particularly in basketball, once you turned over 3, 4, and 5 conferences to one individual, the family thing was over. Ron Zetcher was no longer a Big 8 official, so to speak. He was working in the Big 8 and the Metro and and whatever. And quite frankly, I enjoyed being a Big 8 official. I took so much pride in it. One of the first games I refereed in that conference, and I was really wet behind the ears, and he just got me through the game. I don't even know if I blew my whistle 3 times. The great Earl Brown. What'd you think of him, Bill?
Oh, man, there's another baseball guy.
Yep.
Irv was so knowledgeable. Irv knew how to deal with people, and really good official mechanically.
He did it all, and really he left us way too soon. I was shocked when I heard, and I don't know how many years ago that we had lost Irv. But anyway, Bill, we want to. How much time do we have right now before a break?
About 3 minutes for a break. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll keep talking about. Well, can you tell me a little bit about when you took that first big job, being the director of the Final Four? And boy, there's a lot going into that as far as selecting the teams and then selecting the officials and how that goes.
Yeah, I was really lucky to have that position. We had the Final Four in Kansas City in 1988, of course, and I got to know the NCAA staff I was the co-chairman of the local host committee for that event. And of course, what a great weekend that was for the Big 8 conference with Kansas and Oklahoma playing in the championship game. Anyway, shortly after that, the NCAA said, we need to hire somebody full-time to run the tournament. Imagine there was no full-time administrator, and two or three people were doing it part-time. And so they said, we need somebody full-time. And I was just lucky enough to be in the right place. I tell people that because I already lived in Kansas City where the NCAA office was located, they hired me because they wouldn't have to pay moving expenses.
And they hired you because you're the best man for the job. And you know that. You're this very humble man.
Well, I don't know about that. But you talked about officiating and selecting the teams. Of course, team selection was a big part of it. But as an administrator, you don't do things yourself. Your staff does them. And, of course, Hank Nichols ran the officiating program. And we had 2 or 3 of us that worked together on the selections of the teams. Those were great weekends. I spent 16 years with that basketball committee, 16 March weekends picking those teams. And it was a remarkable experience. But you always think about Team 65, their coaches, their players, their fans, and how disappointed they're going to be. But you can't worry about it. You just have to make the right decision based on the information that you have.
And you have, like you said, you're surrounded by some very, very good, knowledgeable basketball people. And you guys usually get it right. Sure, there's going to always be, like you said, that 65th team that's going to be unhappy. That happens.
Yeah, always. And really every sport, every NCAA sport has a committee, just like ours in basketball. And then when we started the football championship, we created the same committee for football. Every sport has a committee. Every softball, volleyball, soccer, they all go through baseball. They all go through the same thing of selecting teams and knowing that someone has to be left out. It's not an all-comers meet. Not everybody gets to play. And you better prove it during the regular season that you deserve it.
All right. So we're going to take a little time out here. Bill's coming back there.
Bill, I hope you'll stay with us. Can you stay with us, sir?
Yeah, for a little bit, you bet.
Okay. Let me ask you this too before we have the break. You went to see your your granddaughter rowing this morning? Did you get that in?
Yeah, we did. She rowed for the club team in college in Northwestern in Chicago. Loved it. Rowed 4 years. Graduate, works for a newspaper in Oklahoma City, and found a rowing club. So she goes out every Saturday morning with her colleagues, and they row. They compete. Rowers are so incredibly fit. And my granddaughter was not a great athlete, but she loves it and she's really fit.
Well, I've read about you too and your marathons and your cross-country bike rides, and I want to talk about that one big bike ride later if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yep, happy to do it.
Okay, we'll be back with you in a minute, sir.
Yeah, we'll have a few more minutes with Bill Hancock after this timeout. You're listening to the Earl Austin Experience, the easy second hour on the Lou Information Station, or you can listen live on demand at louinfo.com.
In your city with Kelly and Gordon.
It's the easy second hour of the Earl Austin Experience. Earl and Zetch talking it over with Bill Hancock. Ron,
Well, Bill, first thing, we were both, the three of us in the studio here, we were talking about the football playoffs, and they're at 12 now. And what's your thoughts about them maybe going to more teams? What do you think?
I guess I have mixed emotions about that. 12 really feels like a good number to me. It still keeps some emphasis on the regular season. It makes it more important to keep winning during the season. But boy, on the other hand, there's a lot of pressure on commissioners and ADs from coaches who wanted their teams to be in the playoff. I feel a little bit the same way about the basketball tournament. What's wrong with the number that we have? So I guess I'm giving you a non-answer to say I like where it is, but I don't have a vote.
You know, I really love that they went to 12 teams from 4 because now it gets to feel like football's kind of becoming like the NCAA basketball tournament. Because as an Ohio State fan, you know, obviously the Michigan game is everything. But when the Buckeyes lost to Michigan last year, obviously people were jumping off bridges. But I was like, okay, whatever. It's the playoffs. It's about the tournament now. I had my eye wanted to see the Buckeyes win the national championship. I'm 60. I've seen Ohio State beat Michigan about 45 times in my life. So what's another one? I wanted the Natty. So I think that's cool that it's become kind of like basketball where, yeah, the rivalry game is huge, but I think winning that national championship in a tournament style, I think to see the football players get to experience what every other Division I, the main guys get to experience what every other NCAA athlete gets to experience. I think it's cool that the football gets to experience that type of tournament because everybody else plays it.
Well,
yeah,
Bill,
12 is a good number.
Bill, I want to talk to you, and I asked you prior, to this show, if we could discuss the I think it was, January 27th, 2001. That was a bad day when the Oklahoma State basketball team with your son on that airplane went down. And then there are a lot of things happened after that, Bill. And the first I really knew a lot about is when Ralph McFillin invited you to come to a MIAA meeting that I was supervisor of. And you came there and you brought a book. It was the Riding the Blue Moth. And that book that you wrote had a lot to do with the loss of your son. Could you, if you're comfortable with it, of course, we talked, could you talk a little bit about that? I thought it was just a tremendous book and everything else.
Well, thank you, Ron. We were, it was an unimaginable tragedy when our son was killed, and yet we are not alone. And there are tragedies happening. Tragedies have happened since we started on this show a half hour ago. Every minute someone crosses over. And what you learn is that you are not alone, and it's a new world, but it's a great world still. And you find joy wherever you can find it. People told me in those first weeks, there will come a time when you will think of your son, Will, and you will think happy thoughts. And I thought, no, not going to happen. Well, it did happen. And so now when I think of Will, I'm sad, but I also think many, many happy thoughts. Yesterday, someone sent me a photo of him singing at a wedding. He was a musician. And I thought, golly, that was so cool. So grief happens. You're not alone in grief, and it's part of life. Just do your best. That's what we wound up doing. We were blessed because in a terrible way, everyone in our business knew about this. And so we got so much support from coaches and officials and people we went to high school with, just thousands of cards and phone calls and letters. It was remarkable. So terrible tragedy, but we learned to live with it.
There was one incident on your bike ride that my wife, obviously she was reading when you saw, I think you had maybe a father was really admonishing his son, and you saw it, and you had a really strong feeling about that. Do you remember that? Or
Yeah, I sure do. But bottom line here is 8 months after the tragedy, I decided to live what I had dreamed of, which was to see if I could ride my bicycle across the country. I had been a marathon runner and I loved it. I loved the endurance sports, but I just thought, I'm going to see if I can do this. So we took the bike out to Huntington Beach, California, and dipped the rear wheel in the Pacific Ocean, as you do. And 36 days later, I dipped the front wheel in the Atlantic Ocean at Tybee Island, Georgia. Met all kinds of people, as you can imagine, across the way, most of whom thought I was crazy because it was July and August when we did that.
A little warm
in the South,
a little warm.
California desert, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. So it was terribly hot. Anyway, I saw a guy chewing out his son, and I just thought, sir, that child is a gift. Now you need to raise him with discipline, but don't abuse him. It just broke my heart. This guy had this treasure in his son, and he didn't know it. Well, we learned. We knew it. We know it now.
well, I read, I guess it was the foreword to your book by Jim Nance. That about says it all, doesn't it? Wasn't that a beautiful thing that Jim Nance wrote?
It was beautiful. And I called him and said, Jim, is there any way you'd do this? And he said, I would be honored. And he spent a lot of time, as you read it, you could see he spent a lot of time working on that forward. And I thought he did a beautiful job.
Well, it was beautiful and it was well written. And I don't know how much more time you have, but one last thing I do want you to try to explain to me. I've read it. Boy, oh boy, the Michael Cleary Merit of Honor Award. Wow, Bill. I mean, think about the people that received that award before you did this past June. What an honor.
Well, it was a great honor, just kind of amazing. And, Arnold Palmer, Pete Rozelle, and I think there have been 11 or 12 people that have received that award. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought they got the wrong guy.
No, they didn't. No. Listen, let me tell you something. Arnold Palmer, Tom Lasorda, Phil Knight from Nike, Pat Summit, Jim Delaney, Miles Brand, Holly Rowe. Come on.
Hey, Ron, in 20 years, somebody will pick up that list and they will say, oh, these are good people, but who in the world is this Hancock guy?
Who's Bill Hancock?
Hancock?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they ever open up any kind of a website with your name on it, they'll find out who you are. You're an icon.
Well, much appreciated, much appreciated. And I want to tell you, it's been really fun to do this. Hope we can do it again in some time in a year or so. But I also want to tell you, we're very familiar with St. Louis. First of all, my sister-in-law is a federal judge in St. Louis. I won't give her name because I don't want to broadcast it, but she is the most famous one in our family. She lives over in the Soulard, has lived there for a long time, loves it. And every time we go there, I drag her to the Soulard market, of course. And then our grandson just graduated from college at Webster. So I had a great experience, loved Webster Groves. He was a theater major in the Sargent Conservatory there, loved it. So anyway, we're very close to St. Louis.
Well, we're beyond honored to have you on this show today, sir.
And my final question, I see Michigan pays a visit to Norman tonight. I imagine you have a little interest in watching that one tonight.
Yeah, we are going to the game.
Going, excellent. I could imagine.
Yeah, with our grandson being a student there, we go as often as we can to spend time with him. And I guess, Earl, I know who you are cheering for in that game.
Yes.
I went to the Big House to a game 3 or 4 years ago, and I love walking around talking to fans at games. And Ohio State had lost that day to somebody. And I asked people, I said, are you disappointed that the Buckeyes lost? No, I want them to lose every game.
Hey, Bill, there's a big game today in Columbia, also KU and Missouri, and I've got a real problem with that game because I have two grandsons. One goes to Missouri, he's a sophomore, and one goes to Kansas, and they're like brothers, and they met up in Columbia last night, which right away I've got some concerns about, if you know what I'm talking about. And then they're going to be there all day today at that game. And then the last thing I told both of them, you better be walking everywhere you go after that game. Don't you dare get in a car.
Well, my dad went to Mizzou and one of my sons went to KU. So, we could be sad and talk about how terrible it is they don't play each other, but that won't do any good. But isn't it great they're playing today? And I cannot wait to see the outcome of that game.
Neither can I.
Do you get to be a fan now? Like you say, your grandson's at Oklahoma. Do you get to go as a fan now with no administrative duties and everything? And what is that like to just go and enjoy the game?
I do go as a fan. I got to tell you, I don't cheer. I can't cheer. It doesn't. After all those years in the press box, I just don't cheer. And I think people around me look at me like, "What's wrong with that guy? Why is he not cheering?" But I love football. I love basketball, of course. I love baseball too. I love going, but I just don't cheer. I love to watch the band. I love to listen. I love to watch the people. So yeah, it's great. I have no work duties at all. I just sit there and eat my hot dog and enjoy the game.
Well, you've given us more than the amount of time. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I'm going to just sign off with this. You hit the trifecta. First director of the NCAA Final Four, first administrator of the Bowl Championship Series, and the first administrator of the College Football Playoff. I don't think there's much more we can say about you, sir. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you, Ron. I've just been really lucky. I just got a job I enjoyed and I kind of stuck with it.
Probably did pretty good at it, too. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Earl. Good talking to you guys. Take care.
Appreciate your time. That's quite a resume right there. Just those.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And what, if you listen to the guy like we did today, I mean, the he's just a humble, decent human being. Maybe that's why he's so successful, is that people saw that quality in him everywhere he went.
Well, like you said, you went over his background, where he came from, and I think he just sustained him throughout, working at a small newspaper in a small town where you get to know everybody in the town. You're covering everything, you're covering the high school football game on Friday night. You might be doing something on a Saturday morning out at the state fair,
Sure.
So you get a chance to meet. You become a community person yourself. You know everybody, and you know how to communicate with everybody, different of all walks of life. So now you go to the big school, big state university, and then all of a sudden you're on a national level. But those, that background, that foundation is still with you, and that's why it was such an easy. Like I said, why did they choose me? Yeah, they know why, because he knows how to communicate with. He knows his business. But then you know how to communicate with people. And that's the thing, especially when that football, trying to get that thing from 4 to 12 or whatever. You're dealing with a lot of different interests, a lot of different, and in a lot of different conferences. The big conference doesn't want the little conference, and and then the basketball, our conference needs 72 bids. We want the mid-major conference. We don't want, so you're always communicating and putting out fires and bringing people together and trying to find some kind of common ground and consensus. And he sounds like a guy that was able to do that in all those fronts. And that's why he was so successful at it.
Well, when I met him, and this goes back years ago, probably in the early 80s, when I was refereeing in the Big 8 conference and he was an administrator, he was just an everyday guy. I mean, just, hi, Ron, hi, whoever you are, and treated you with dignity. And, he made a great statement when he was talking that, when you're talking to somebody, they're trying to tell you something. So quit thinking about yourself and listen to what they're telling you.
Mhm.
And I'm not real good at that. I mean, I'm trying to get better. You know, at my age, I better get better before I don't have a chance to do anything anymore. But I think that's a great quality that people have.
Oh, listening is lost art, kind of like the bounce pass in basketball. It's a lost art because everybody's out there talking through and at each other and really not listening to what the other people say and each other says. So being able to listen, even if you have a different point of view, it's good to listen to what their point of view, then get your point of view. We're in a shouting thing as more so than just listening to each other. It's funny because last month we had, Doug Elgin, another great administrator, but just a good dude also as well.
A good man.
I don't know. This is my first time meeting Bill through the radio, but I've known Doug for years and just,
well, Earl, let me ask you.
And he was on those NCAA committees and all that,
He was on the committees and didn't Doug, I'm trying to remember the Missouri Valley school that he referenced that didn't make the playoffs.
It was SIU Carbondale.
SIU Carbondale. They didn't get a bid to the NCAA tournament, and Doug felt very strongly. And I'll tell you what I think. What really
I remember why they played at Illinois State, I believe, and they lost by 2. One of the funniest thing, it was so funny for Carbondale, in that game, they had a guy named Freddie McSwain, who's a really good player, great athlete. And he came down court and threw a reverse dunk and went through the basket, and it bounced off of his head and back out of the basket. And I don't think it counted. That shouldn't count. That's not a basket.
That's not a basket. No, it's got to come through the head.
Yeah. And they ended up losing by 2. And I still remember Selection Sunday, and then later that evening, they won 27-28 again. They had a hell of a season. And I could just see just Rich Herron, who's a good friend, love Rich Herron, and his brother Ron, rest their soul. I remember they just showed him on TV, and the look of, like you say, despair on his face when they didn't get a bid to that tournament, because that was a good Carbondale SIU team. And man, that hurt me when I saw Rich on TV after that.
Well, I refereed for a lot of coaches in the Missouri Valley Conference, and when you mention Rich Herron, you're talking about one of the finest, just a great guy, a great coach from a great basketball family.
Yes.
And that was devastating. They deserved to go to that tournament.
I remember Rich had some great teams at Benton High School. I believe he had Doug Collins, I think, high school coach.
Yes.
In the early 70s. I believe Rich was there. And when Rich went to college, Ron, his brother, was a great dude, also took over the Benton program. And like I say, I traveled a lot. I was in St. Louis a lot, obviously covering high school basketball, but I did a lot of traveling in Southern Illinois. Back in Southern Illinois, hoops was where it was at. And the Benton Invitation Tournament, VIT, was big. I went there a lot, but just because of the Herron brothers,
well, think about some of the coaches, Earl, that came out of SIU Carbondale and where they went. Bruce Weber, and you probably know.
Oh, I love Bruce Weber. I think still lives here, I think in Webster, I believe. Matt Painter, great coach at Purdue. Bruce Weber's had tremendous success. Go back to Jack Hartman.
Now, listen, Jack Hartman, and I'll tell you a tremendous story about Jack Hartman. So I had a game at Kansas State. Jack Hartman was doing the radio then, and I had refereed for him many times, and I had the greatest respect for him. And I'll tell you what Jack Hartman used to say to referees. He was the smartest coach on the bench to referees. Here's what he would say. If there was a call that Ron Zetcher missed, and there were many, as you were going by him, here's what Jack Hartman would say. Ron, you're better than that. Now, you can't penalize a guy for that.
No.
But he sent a message. So one night I had a game, and I can't remember the whole circumstance, but this official timer really messed up at the end of a game. And they were playing Minnesota, and Haskins was a coach of Minnesota.
Right.
And it was a big intercollegiate game. And so anyway, I had to go over to the scoring table and I had to go through a bunch of stuff. And finally I just said, you know what, to myself, I knew that timer had really, I think it was intentional. I could never prove it. So we had to put some time on. And I told the two guys, I said, I'm telling you, unless Kansas State, I mean, unless there's just a total takedown, we're not going to blow a whistle. We're getting this game over with. And after the game, I came out of the locker room and Jack Hartman was standing there. He says, Ron, if we had won this game tonight, after what happened down there, I'd have been ashamed of my university. I'm glad the way you guys handled it.
Awesome. We'll close it out here. But first, also another coach, Chris Lowry, who's now assistant coach with Chris Collins at Carolina, at Northwestern, went to the Sweet 16. He took Carbondale, Darren Brooks, and some great teams, a lot of players from St. Louis they recruited. Jack Hartman also at Carbondale before at Kansas State led SIU to the NIT championship, beat Al McGuire's Marquette team. Of course, they had 2 NBA stars. Dick Garrett is one, played with the Bucks, but of course the great Walt Frazier.
Oh, yes.
In that backcourt as well. But in our closing, man, it was a great time having Bill on.
Oh, boy. What a just a fine man, and what a great interview, and what he's done in his career. You know, you can't say any more about it. But Earl, it was a pleasure today, wasn't it?
It really was. We had a great show. An hour, 45 minutes with Bill Hancock. We had some great music from Eugene Peebles and the Talking Sacks, and some talented young players from Hazelwood East High Schools. And I think that's the beauty of this show. You get a chance to hear from some young people doing some good things in the area. And then in the easy second hour, we get a chance to delve into the history of sports.
And, you know, I wanted to say hello to one of those Hazelwood East people, because my wife's daughter, Katie Kunkler, she is the behavior disorder special school district teacher at Hazelwood East High School.
Oh, okay.
And she handles those kids it's unbelievable how she can handle those kids, but boy, does she do a great job.
That does. Well, now we'll wrap up another edition of the Earl Austin Experience. Of course, if you didn't listen live, you can listen on the Lou Information Station live or on demand at louinfo.com, or we're on YouTube now as we did our first time. We'll talk to you again next Saturday.